Well, we're going to be in Psalm 118, verse 24 tonight. And I wanted to fill you in on a couple of things I saw in the news this week. The government's trying to help us out with our hot water heaters now. They're going to cost more starting today and be bigger. And in over half of my apartments, they won't fit in the same place I got them now without cutting the door out or have two that's up in the attic. They won't go up the attic steps anymore. And they might save you $20 a year. So the government's doing the government thing again, but they can sell the stock they've got in stock before they have to offer this new one, like Home Depot and places like that will be able to sell out what they've got. They don't have to push aside what they've got. I think like about 10 of my apartments they won't fit. So I was really excited with my government today when I heard that. I said, oh boy, they're helping me out. And another thing I heard this week, it goes back to something I mentioned there Sunday, that we didn't need any more potheads in America. We had enough. They interviewed a reporter from out in Colorado where they made pot legal. Some of you may have seen this. They're baking it in foods a lot now, putting it in foods. They're making things that look like Reese's Cups with some kind of oil in there that they got from the marijuana plant. It's much more potent. But because they legalized that, they're going to have to make a lot more rules now. Because when people eat it, it don't work as fast as it does when they smoke it. So they eat it and they say, well, it didn't do nothing. I'm going to eat some more. And they've already had a guy, I think a college student, jump out of a building and kill himself. And they've already attributed one man murdering his wife on the effects of the marijuana. So I just wanted to share that with you. I saw that on Fox this week. They interviewed that report out there. And he said, you know, they're going to have to make a lot more rules because they made this one rule legalizing marijuana. But they said the one they make that they eat it is a lot more potent than what happens when they smoke it. So listen, we don't need any more potent around. Potent enough, we need to keep them away from that one. But looks like that's what's happening.
I saw a magazine cover at the newsstand. She got today where that Willie Nelson was going to start making pot since they made it legal.
I would not be surprised. No. He's an old pro. So Psalm 118, verse 24. This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. You know, we don't think that much about a single day quite often in our lives. You know, last Wednesday I was standing up here telling you that maybe that day or next day, you know, Granny would probably pass away and all that. And it did work out like that. And you only get one of those in your lifetime per person. You know, we're all going to have one of those if the Lord tarries His coming one of these days, and we don't know when that day is going to be. This day, 22 years ago, and Miss Cole was at church at Hollandville, and it was a Wednesday night, and she said, I think we're going to have a baby tonight. And we got home and hung around the house a little bit and went to the hospital, and a little after midnight, Zach came along, and I can't believe it's been 22 years ago. I mean, 22 years went by like that. Bill said Mark Lowry says it's like toilet paper. When you get closer to the end, the faster it goes when you pull it off, you know. And I'm sure that it's that way because I've already telling a little bit in my own life how fast life is fleeting. So I want you to think a few things tonight with me about that idea of today. This day that we're finishing up here is a day that God made. And we can find plenty about it that we might not like. Listen, when I heard it was going to rain on next Tuesday, I was just not jumping for joy. I mean, stopping on this Tuesday would have been fine with me. To know it's going to go on next Tuesday, I mean, give me a break. What's that? Man, we're only going to get 3 days off, huh? So, there's some things that we'll find we don't like about some days, but, this verse teaches us that every day we have is a blessing from the Lord. If you look back in your life, God didn't have to let you get this old. However old that is. I mean, in my ministry, I buried from babies to 98 years old. God has blessed us with having these days and having these times and having these opportunities. And I'm glad I got what I got. I complain a lot about being 60 next time. But hey, I'm glad to get there. I'm glad to have the opportunity. God didn't have, listen, when I was a teenager, God had plenty of opportunities to get rid of me. I mean, I made it easy. If he'd have just let some things not miss by that much, I wouldn't be here today. And some of you can say the same thing. So God has been gracious and merciful and wonderful to us to let us have this time and have these days. So I want to ask you this question. Do you appreciate every day? This is the day the Lord has made. He let us have this. He lets us have 1,440 minutes every day. Now, we waste those like we have an infinite amount of minutes. Your life clock's been ticking since the day you were born. And it's been getting shorter every day. Shorter every minute. Shorter every week. And after the message we looked at Sunday morning, shouldn't we be doing something with these days we got left? When we know there's a finite amount of them in this body here on this earth, and it's getting smaller every day. When I was a young fella growing up, rich folks around here had land. And I saw in my lifetime my granddaddy sell some land that would join my Uncle Riley's property out down there on Shackford Road for $87 an acre. I sat in a chair and watched him in the yard, sit in a chair and sign the papers to sell it for $87 an acre. And I saw some of that same land be worth $10,000 an acre. And I've seen the $10,000 an acre go back to $3,000 an acre. In my lifetime, I've seen those things transpire. I'm sure my granddad thought, boy, I'm putting it over on this guy that's giving me $87 for this land. Ain't nothing but old Rocky Hill up there. But I ain't sure who the joke was on. The place where we live, my parents gave, I think, $3,500 for it. 130 acres years ago. We found one time where it sold for $25. $3,000 sounds like a lot compared to $25. That kind of a happening. So, things happen, things change, days go by. You won't be able to put your hot water heater in where it's at now. Time marches on. Listen, one of my apartments, the ones over on Lisa Lane, were built in the 90s. They've already messed with hot water heaters since the 90s because I had to replace one this year, and I had to take out the part of the door that the door hits on when you close it. I had to take it out to get the water heater in that meets the code this year. So the new code today, I already know I'm going to have to put in a bigger door for the next one. You know, the government's making us more efficient, making us in their eyes better. Has crossed my mind today. I promise you. I might buy a spare. So, do you appreciate the day we got? My wife thinks she should have been born quite a ways back there, the cowboy days. I told y'all before, I'm just right for today. My last cabin trip was with the Boy Scouts. I probably won't never make another until the Lord takes me home. It's been a long time since I've been in the Boy Scouts. I ain't looking for my next camping trip. My last one was fine with me. I like the niceties we have in America today. That's why I think so much about our missionaries when they leave and go to a place where a lot of times they don't even have running water. They can't enjoy a hot bath. You know, we got it made. God's been good. God's been wonderful. God's blessed us. I said this last week, and some of you heard me say it on Granny's passing. I may have said it in here the other day. I can't remember. After she had passed away, and I was sharing with some folks about it, and it's been interesting. Some of our friends didn't find out till today. I'm still getting phone calls today about her passing. And folks brought cards in today to the bank and gave Miss Core to let us know that they were thinking about us. And I made this comment to Brother Doyle last week, and it was this: who am I to tell God what to do? You know, when he got ready to take my mama, who am I to tell him I don't like that? It ain't the right timing. It ain't the good time. You know, it worked out just like I said I wanted it to work out the other night. I wasn't standing there watching when she passed away. The kids wasn't there. They were gone home. They wasn't standing there watching. And then that whole thing, I said, well, God's gracious. And God's merciful. And God will answer prayer. And God is good to us. So the days that He's given us ought to be important to us. You know the first question somebody asks when the doctor says, you got cancer and I can't do nothing for you? How much time do I have? That's the question they ask. All of a sudden, time becomes important. We don't let it be important to us because we think we got a lot of it. We fool ourselves into thinking we got a lot of it. The first question is not, what's this treatment going to cost? Can I go back to work? How's this going to affect my family? The first question is, how much time do I have? Because they understand on that day how precious it is and how important it is and how much God did not want us to waste it, especially as we look in the news and see that Jesus may be coming back soon. Now, I'm just an old corn pone preacher from Pike County, Georgia. But I'm smart enough to know this. If you've looked over there and paid a little attention to what was going on, as soon as they thought they had a deal over there, the Iranians purchased those missiles to protect themselves from Russia. As soon as that was going to be the first thing sold to them after the embargo or the restrictions were lifted. You know what that's for? That's so Israel can't blow them up. If they get that in place, they'll only be able to be blown up by a stealth bomber. So if they get the agreement with us, and we have a president that won't bomb them, and the Israelis can't bomb them, guess what they're going to do? They're going to make themselves an atomic bomb to use on somebody. Does it take a rocket scientist to see that? And if they use one on somebody, if Jesus ain't come back by then, I think he's headed back, folks. Because that stuff's happening right where it needs to happen. Listen, you may not agree with those people over there. I don't agree with them. Their religion takes them straight to hell. They're going to bust hell wide open. But if we think they're stupid, we got another thought coming. It's no accident that within a week of saying we got a deal, we're getting these missiles to protect ourselves from Russia. And the protection is to be protected from Israel blowing up their nuclear stuff, in my opinion. Every time I flip on the television, I see something on there that makes me think it's getting closer and closer and more imminent every day. Quicker than we think. If that happened to be true, how important would these days be in our lives? If we are close to the end, how important would these days be? They'd be your most precious days in your limited quantity before either the Lord comes back or He takes us home to be with Him. Well, this is the day which the Lord hath made. I believe He wants us to appreciate today, and tomorrow. He did a lot of that in talking to us about worries. Remember He talked to us over there in James. We saw that a few weeks back where He said, well, go over here and say, well, I'm going to do this or do this business if the Lord lets me do this. If He made these days and put them in our lives, we ought to let them belong to Him. We didn't make them. The missionary that's building the plane to take to Alaska, to Alaska to be a missionary, when he gets through building it, it will be his plane. And unlike a plane built in a factory, to inspect a plane built in a factory, you have to be like me or an authorized inspector that's a notch above me. I can sign off some things, and some things it takes an authorized inspector to sign off who's been approved by the FAA. That will not be the case on his plane. His plane will belong to him, and he can inspect it because he built it. He will not be governed by the same rules as a Cessna or a Piper or any of those names that you heard from many years ago with the small airplanes. He'll not be governed. He will have to inspect it every year, but he can inspect it and sign it off himself even if he is not a licensed mechanic because he built it. It's his. Well, let's apply that for a moment to our days. God built them. They're really His. He let us have some of them. He let us use some of them. He created them. He put them together. And before you got here, He knew exactly how many you had. Every one of us. You know how he said the hairs of our head are numbered, you know? Listen, he knows that. He knows our days. He knew before we got here how long we'd be sticking around, how much time we had. So if he made them, why don't we give them to him? He's the expert on our days. We might say it this way. Why don't we dedicate each day to him? He gave it to us. Why don't we let him have it? Because he gave it to us. Remember when the Lord says it's better to give than receive? Remember that? It was repeated over in Acts from the funeral service. These last funerals I've done. You know, better to give than receive. It'd be better to... He's teaching us in that, you know, don't hold on so tight. Learn how to give. Learn how to give away. You know what? We hoard our days and we don't give them to him. We don't let him have them. We want to keep them for ourselves. There'll come a day when keeping them for yourself will be over. We don't know when that day's coming. My mom got 90 years. Listen, there are a ton of folks don't get 90 years. I think I may have told y'all this. When I called my Uncle Riley up to tell him that Granny had passed away, he's 81, I think, be 82 this year in the summertime. We talked a little bit, and I told him about her passing and all. Something was said about her being 90 years old. And I said to him, I said, 90 ain't too old when you're 82, is it? He said, heck no. When you're 82, 90 ain't too old. 8 more years. I think it kind of turned the light bulb on that we like to ignore in our lives. This limited number of days that we have. Because if he lives to be as old as my mama, he's got 8 more years. Not many men do that. I'll tell you this. There's been 8 kids in my dad's family pass away, and ain't one of them made 90 yet. There's one heading that way. He's got a birthday in May, and that'll be 85 or 86. But none of them's made 90 yet. The 8 that's passed away so far, none of them made 90. So there's only 3 more chances of those making 90. And the baby is either going to be 79 or 80 this year out of my mom and dad's family, or grandmother and grandfather's family. So how do we dedicate each day to the Lord? Give me John 17:4 there, David. I'll just do these off the board. It's Jesus speaking right here. He says, I have glorified thee on the earth. He's talking to the Father. I have finished the work which thou gavest me to do. You want to glorify God? Do what he wants you to do. That's how we glorify him with our days. Jesus said, I've glorified you and I've finished what you want me to do. I did what you sent me here to do. I don't know this about the Bema Seat judgment, so you can throw it in the trash on the way out if you want to. But we may get to the Bema Seat judgment, and God may show us what we did laid down beside what he wanted us to do. Uh-oh. I don't think we're going to want to read across the page. I have finished the work which thou gave me to do. I'm afraid in America today, in most churches in America, we don't want to find out what God wants us to do, because then we feel like we'd be responsible to do it, and we probably wouldn't do it, but it'd make us feel bad. Did you get all that? I'll spit that out kind of fast. I ain't sure we really want, I hear people say, well, how do I know God's will? I want to know God's will for my life. Well, if you ain't going to do it, it don't amount to a hill of beans to know it. I intend to plant some corn at my house this year, if it ever quits raining. I've pretty much done my part. I'm hoping my uncle's going to bring Mr. Bell's tractor over there with a planter on the back of it and put me however many rows he can put in what I got plowed up. And that's the only thing I'm going to plant. Now, I really don't need to know much about planting peppers and tomatoes and all that, because I ain't going to plant none. If I was going to plant some, it might behoove me to know something about it. And like Danny said about okra would be nice, but the deer like it better than I do. You know, I sure ain't going to plant nothing for them to eat. There just ain't much future in it. And I love, like I told y'all, I think the other day, I love them stuffed bell peppers, but I'll probably have to go to the farmer's market or see my buddy Alonzo so I can have some stuffed bell peppers. Because the only thing I'm planning on planting is corn. So I won't be Googling nothing else to eat on there, because I ain't going to plant it. And that's kind of the way we are about God's will. God's probably sitting in heaven today saying, well, why should I tell you ain't going to do it? Why should I make it perfectly clear to you? If you ain't going to do it, it don't really matter, does it? We all like to tell ourselves, oh, if God told me, I would do it. We got more Jonah in us than we like to admit. Jonah, the Lord told him to go to Nineveh. He said, I'm checking out of here. I ain't going there. You know what he basically said? Them folks ain't gonna never be saved. Just let them go to hell. That's basically what he did. Because even after they had a great revival, he didn't like it. He thought about them the way we think about ISIS, pretty much. It's the way Jonah thought about them. God sent him on over there anyway. And had a great revival. And it started with a king. And they got saved. And Jonah wasn't excited. He wasn't real happy they got saved. He was more worried about his gourd that died on him. God took my gourd away. Well, poor little baby. God took your gourd away. Now ain't going to get a sunburnt head. Poor little baby. You know. Want to honor God with your day? Do what God says. Do what He wants. Make Him happy. Put a smile on His face. We know enough about Him to know what makes Him happy. But do we really care what He thinks? Because sometimes it goes against what we want to do. Don't mesh together sometimes. Didn't mesh together in Jonah's life. And by the way, Nineveh and Tarsus, that was like one this way, one this way. He went the other way. Just the opposite of what God wanted him to do and where God wanted him to go. And God was gracious and merciful. Let a whale swallow him or a big fish. And turn him around. And dust him off. Head him in the right direction again. This may come as a shock. Sometimes God don't take no for an answer. And if He don't, sometimes it don't feel good. Sometimes it ain't fun. Sometimes it don't make our day. So if you want to glorify Him, simple. Do what He wants you to do. Dedicate it to Him. Now, David, give me Ephesians 5, starting at verse 16. This will tie in with our message Sunday morning. Redeeming the time because the days are evil. If you can't flip on the TV today and know that they are evil days, you have been hid for about the last 30 years. these are evil days all over this world. And really evil over there around Israel. I mean, they're taking evil to new heights over there. Redeeming the time because the days are evil. You know what evil days will do to your time? They'll take it away from you sometimes. Heard a guy on TV this week talking about, losing liberty and losing rights. Well, that's what has happened over the last 40 years. There was a time when the Congress of the United States in the 1800s voted that it was okay to teach school kids out of the Bible. And if you told that to a teenager today, they'd look at you like a calf looking at a new gate. They don't have a clue America was that way. It was voted in the Congress of the United States it was okay to teach school kids by the Bible. We need to go back to them days. What happened? Liberalism stood up and we sat down. Is basically what happened. And we didn't lose it all in one fell swoop. We didn't even lose it all with Madalyn Murray O'Hair. We lost it a piece at a time. A piece at a time. And a piece at a time. My mom and her mom were all about some school. Like I told y'all on the funeral the other day. 2 rules at my mama's house. If you ain't working, you're going to be in school. If you ain't one of them 2, you don't live here. How many mamas are there left in America that would say that? There was a lot of them in my mama's generation. There was a lot of them that would say that. Well, I was born in 1955. What's happened since 1955? And I'm going to tell you something. Like I say, you can throw this in the trash if you want to. Somehow or another, that idea that family said, my kids got to have it better than I had it. I want my kids to have it better than I had it. Let me tell you something. Some of what made my mama was growing up rough. I told the ladies that were cleaning down here Monday morning, I went over and paid my bill, paid Granny's bill at Moody's Monday morning. I told these ladies and I told the Moody's, I got over here at 9:15 to pay this bill. My mama had been here at 9 o'clock. It wouldn't have sat well with her for 15 minutes to know she had a bill that wasn't paid. I want to tell y'all about this commercial the other day, but I couldn't remember who it was. And this is who it is. I heard it last night, and it makes me mad every time I hear it. So now it can make you mad every time you hear it. There's a young, teenage to low 20s girl, she's a black girl, I think, talking about Liberty Mutual. She says, you bump a little car, and it's like, and I ain't getting this part just right. You know, the biggest thing in the world. And she says, and you've been the poster child for paying your payment every month. And every time it comes on, I hear that, I say, and you're supposed to pay your insurance every month. If that's the way it comes, you don't get to be a poster child for paying your bills. Makes me mad every time I see it. You do not get pat. The problem in America is you are not supposed to get patted on the back for doing what's right. And now we think we got to give everybody on the soccer team a trophy if they play 2 minutes. You do not get patted on the back for doing what's right. And I ain't a real pat on the back preacher. I've told y'all that 100 times. Because nobody has to pat me on the back for me to do my thing. Nobody has to call me to get me out of bed. Nobody has to tell me to prepare and be ready. But in America, we think we got to be patted on the back for doing right. And we've raised generations who believe if they do right, they get a pat on the back. I remember a generation where you got a pat a little lower than the back when you didn't do right. And that's where we ought to be in America. We call them the good old days in America. If you didn't do right, somebody wore your britches out. But now we've raised generations thinking, well, if I do right, I got to get a pat on the back. If I work hard on a job, I got to get a bonus. I saw some more liberalism on TV today, and you're going to think I'm wrong when I tell you this. Did you see the guy on TV who had a company, he was making $1 million a year, and he cut his salary to $70,000 and gave everybody $70,000 minimum? Yep. Everybody makes the same in his company now. The average was $48,000. So starting workers were about 30. Everybody went today to $70,000. Well, that's great. If you want to be like socialism. Yeah. Oh, they didn't? Okay. So he moved everybody to 70. You want to know what the Bible principle is? Now, I'm not talking about those who got in, remember a few weeks ago, in the morning, middle, evening. But if you look at the Bible principle, the stewards there, the guy who had the most got the one from the guy who didn't do nothing with it. That's called capitalism. That's how capitalism works. And that's made America great. Because you could start at the bottom and work hard and go somewhere. Tomorrow, Zach will be going to work in Thomaston unless somebody else called with another job while I was gone today. In the construction business for $10.50 while he's waiting on a Delta call. He will be starting at the bottom at the construction company. I'm assuming they're laying bricks. I don't know. I'll find out maybe tomorrow afternoon what they're doing. But you know what? Whatever they're doing, he's going to be doing it. If it's sweeping, if it's toting bricks, pushing a wheelbarrow. He said a while ago, he said, I'm going to go to Home Depot and get me some gloves tonight. So he must be thinking it's going to be hard work. Because that's probably what you get for $10.50. You know what I mean? It'll make him appreciate that Delta job when it comes. Won't be no problem about him answering the text or the call or whatever comes in. When it comes, he'll be answering it. But that's the way America was when I was a young person. And that's the way America was for many years. You could start at the bottom. When I went to the airline, I was amazed how close my pay was to people who'd been there 25 years. They made more than me, but they didn't make a whole lot more than me. Now they've stretched it out a little bit more. You actually do really move up a scale now from, it ain't quite half price, but it's almost starting at half of what the guys make who've been there. When I went there, it wasn't that way. I mean, I made $7 and something an hour. They might have made $10 and something an hour when I went there. You might boil it down to this. We've taught people in America that they don't have to do nothing with their days to make it in America. They don't have to do nothing with their days. You know, that's what you do when you have a job. You trade in some of your days for their money. That's how jobs work. That's what you do. When you get paid by an hour, you trade it in 60 of your minutes for that hour's pay. We trade in life for that pay. Kind of how it works. I traded in 25 years of days at the airline, plus 5 years in traffic when I was there, going back and forth. That may be where my 59 went, you know. Be not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. Because you only have a certain amount of days, understand what His will is. Be not drunk with wine where there's excess, but be filled with the Spirit. Speaking to yourself in psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, singing, making melody in your heart to the Lord. If you're only going to have so many days, you need to go out there and them charged up and ready to go. Charged up and ready to go. In the Spirit. Singing and making melody to Him. In your heart. You know, it sounds better in here than it does up here. My singing sounds much better in here than it does to the ear. My singing ain't that great. Lord knew what He was doing when He made a preacher out of me. He knew I couldn't sing. Singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. Because you hadn't got but so many. You have a limited number of days. You know, one neat thing about Granny and her passing was this. As time went on, we saw the limiting of her days. Now, I told you last week that the lady shocked me 2 weeks ago when she said, "Are you prepared for 5 days?" Because my mouth said, yeah, I'm prepared for whatever comes. But then I had to digest 5 days a little bit. I wasn't quite as prepared for 5 days as I wanted her to think I was prepared to 5 days. Because at that time I was still thinking in months. A few more months with Granny. But I said this about losing Granny, and it was really great. We lost her in stages. We lost Granny kind of in pieces. I told the women up here Monday morning, by the time she passed away, she could move one arm and her neck. That was all that was left that worked, that moved. If you laid her somewhere at night, she was exactly where you laid her in the morning when you went back. That was all she had left that she could move at that period of time. So we saw that we were losing her pieces at a time. And I think that kind of made it a little easier. You know, it wasn't like we didn't know it was coming. It may have been coming sooner than we thought, but we could see the stages. By the end, and I may have told y'all this, there was nowhere we could lay her that wasn't on a bed sore. For a long time, one side, her right side went without a bed sore. So we could leave her a good bit of time laying there. But by the end, she had one on each hip and one on her hump on the back. So there was nowhere we could put her that she wouldn't be on a bed sore. And God said, that's okay. She ain't going to be around that way very long anyway. And who am I to tell God what to do? Because He's God. We only have a limited number of these days. How are we going to spend them? How are we going to use them? Are we going to use them for Him? That's the real question. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for being so good to us and being so merciful to us. You've been better to us than we deserve. If none of us in here drew another breath, you've already been better than we deserve. Thank you for your grace and mercy and being so good to us. And the limited number of days present here tonight, Lord, let us use them for you. Don't let us be greedy and stingy. But let them be spent for you because you made them anyway. Thank you for loving us so much. This is the day the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.